Hey, welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be going back in time a little bit and taking a look at a laptop that I have here from 2006. This was a business class laptop from HP with some pretty impressive hardware for the time. This particular model is the Compaq nc8430, which has both the HP and Compaq branding on it. And from what I can find, it looks like this would have retailed for around $2,500 as it's configured. And this configuration here was most likely the highest end configuration offered at the time for this model. There were several configurations available regarding, LCD, CPU, and GPU. This one has the Mobile Core 2 Duo T7400, so that's a dual-core 2.16 gigahertz CPU. The Radeon Mobility X1600 dedicated GPU with a dedicated 256 megabytes of memory as well. Windows XP Pro is the installed OS, and you can see that it has a Centrino sticker, which means it not only has a Core 2 Duo, but an Intel chipset and Intel Wi-Fi as well. I did receive this with no hard drive, so it now has a 320 gigabyte SATA drive as opposed to, I think, 60 gigabyte that this would have came with. The LCD display was a higher end option as well, 15.4 inch with a native resolution of 1680 by 1050. So taking a closer look, you can see the stereo speakers that flank the keyboard. The touchpad has 3 buttons instead of the standard 2 with a very convenient scroll bar. And also a touch point, or whatever HP called this feature, similar to the ThinkPads, with 3 mouse buttons below that. Above the keyboard are various function buttons, including the Wi-Fi on-off and the volume controls. And for security, there's a fingerprint reader as well as TPM 1.2. So yeah, it's not Windows 11 ready, guys. The front of the laptop is pretty plain with just indicator lights and a release for the lid. Moving around to the left side, we have a SD card and a card slot, one USB 2.0 port, and I think this is mini FireWire. We have our exhaust and then S-Video with modem and Ethernet ports to finish off this side. The only thing we find on the rear is a VGA out and a power connector. And on the right side, we have a serial port and then a CD-DVD burner optical drive, 2 more USB ports, and our headphone and microphone audio jacks. And if we take a look at the bottom quick, you'll find a convenient hard drive access cover, a RAM slot cover in the middle to access one of the 2 RAM slots. Unfortunately, the other one is underneath the keyboard. And this port cover has a picture of a battery on it with a battery connector underneath. So I'm not sure if there was a secondary battery offered or what, but above that you can see the docking port, and that pretty much covers underneath this machine. The battery does hold a charge, but I'm not sure how well, so I'm going to go ahead and plug it into power and we'll fire it up. And here we can verify the specs of the CPU and GPU and verify that we have 4 gigabytes of DDR2 and dual channel, and I think we're now ready to put it through its paces. First off, we're going to check out web browsing on it, and using Firefox 52.9.0 ESR, the last compatible version for XP, we can use it to download 3D Mark 05. And as you can see, it's pretty responsive considering the age of this, and we're able to search and download pretty easily. And surprisingly, YouTube also runs well on it. We can view videos at 720p with no problems, even in full screen. So now that we downloaded that benchmark, let's run it. That was 3D Mark 05, and now we'll check out the result. And we ended up with a score of 4,058, which I really have nothing to compare it to, but it seems like that would have been considered a decent score for a notebook at the time. But what we all want to know is, will it play games? We are limited, of course, to DX9 games because of the GPU and Windows XP, which is fine. And I do have to use Fraps since Afterburner won't run on this system. So let's go ahead, let's check out some games, and I think we're going to start with Unreal Tournament 2004. We'll see how it does with a resolution of 1024 by 768 with a mix of high and normal.
First blood.
And as you can see with those settings, we had no problem staying over 100 FPS, so there's definitely room to increase either the settings or the resolution here. And next up we have Fear, and we'll see how well it does at 720p with these settings here. And that was actually pretty good. We dropped just below 60 FPS at times, but it was still very playable. So now we're checking out Fallout 3, and we're running around just outside the vault at 720p with low settings, and we're staying right around 30 FPS, so that's not too bad. I thought we might do a little better here, but hell, it's still very playable. I suspect you might have to lower the resolution a little more to maintain that though in a denser area. And you can see here that breaking up that bot drove the frame rate right into the lower 20s. And moving on to Far Cry at 720p with all settings to high, we're going to see if it can handle that.
Mercenaries are trained to work together. If you alert one, they will bring others.
Now that we played it for a little while, I think we might want to lower that a bit. With all that vegetation, it's having a hard time maintaining 60 FPS, but it was still very playable. But the option is there to reduce the resolution of the settings if you want more out of it. And finally, the one question we all have to ask, can it play Crysis? And actually, yeah, it can. At 1024 by 768 with these settings, the frame rate is in the 20s, but I guarantee there are times some of us wish that we could have played in the 20 FPS range at this resolution back in the day. So while it isn't the ultimate Crysis machine, it will absolutely play Crysis. So I guess I'm going to wrap this up here. It's obvious this would have been a pretty impressive laptop in its time for gaming as well as pretty much anything else you wanted to do with it. And it's still quite useful today, 15 years later, for playing older games and even browsing the internet and watching YouTube. And that in itself is pretty impressive. So as always, I hope somebody found this interesting. You guys take care and I'll see you soon.